Today our moderator is, as Ron announced, Mike Gallo, president of Kelly Space. And it's great to have you here, Mike. And I would like to introduce San Bernardino 3rd District Supervisor Don Rowe, who was appointed in December. Prior to serving on the board, Don was elected to the Yucca Valley Town Council and served from 2010 to 2014. During that time, she was elected by her peers to serve as the town mayor. She also sits on the AQMD board. That's one good reason we want you here, and we're glad you're here, for Mojave Desert. And, of course, in the middle, we have Senator Mike Morrell. And I won't read your whole bio, but I hope everybody gets to know you. He was born and raised in California. He was married here, raised his family, wonderful family here. He opened 2 corporations, Provident Home Loans and Provident Realty, and now represents California's 23rd Senate District. Serves on 5 Senate committees, including Vice Chair of the Committee on Housing and the Committee on Labor, Public Employment, and Retirement. But we're going to start with, I don't know, are you ready to start, Don, with kind of a summary of what's been going on, and then we'll move to Mike Morrell, Senator Morrell, for his summary of what's been going on, past and future. So this mic is live.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. As a county representative who has newly been appointed, I am still learning what we have as opportunities in the manufacturing sector, and then also how we can help provide you what I think is one of our biggest challenges today, which is a skilled workforce. And one of the, I have been in the Yucca Valley area for the last 15 plus years. My kids are in college, and I know that I was reading some of the questions that were submitted, and it was an interesting journey with my kids. So when they were in junior high, the track and the emphasis is college. And it is signing up for those A to G classes so that you can have the opportunities to get into perhaps a UC system school here. And it is sort of that courage and emphasis of the universities. And I think a lot of the times our children do what their parents have done. And in a socially impoverished area where I come from, that is often not college. And so they're left to the discretion of the counselors in the school system to urge them to do what then they think they should do. And that emphasis has been college recently. And so unfortunately, that is not for everyone, as you all know here. And we have the lack of skilled workforce, and how do we get that back? So for me, it's been working with our community colleges. It's been working with our workforce development. We have Reg Javier over here with the county, who has done a tremendous job in our Generation Go at the county, where we have career pathways, and we have programs in the high schools and certain ones, and we've partnered with San Bernardino Valley Community College to expose kids at a young age to different career pathways and let them touch, see, feel what it would be like to be in a certain industry. And so that's what we're doing at the county. I'm hopeful that we can replicate that program out in the high desert, where we have a need to hopefully get you the skilled workforces that you need coming up, because college isn't for everyone. My son is a junior in college, and as I go through and I learn about the programs of the county, I wish we could have gone back to that 7th or 8th grade year where he was kind of on the cusp of what should I do, where should I go, what should I be? And then it almost becomes a sealed thing. You start your freshman year and you're working towards that goal. It's PSATs and SAT study classes, and almost it's predetermined that you're going to go to college, and you feel an obligation since you've started that path to finish it up. And you feel like you're something less than if you don't go to college. So I'm hopeful that we can change the narrative for so many people that don't have the means financially or necessarily the inclination to finish a 4-year degree or even a 2-year community college. That there are very great paying jobs that are here in the Inland Empire that you all afford our workforce. We just have to be able to provide you the workforce. So at the county, that's what we're looking to do, is to get you the skilled labor that you need, and that is our main emphasis right now. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Senator Morrell.
Good job. Well, thanks for having us here. And you'll find this out pretty soon. I certainly don't have all the answers to the problems in California. In fact, feel like I have very few sometimes, but I do have some very strong opinions that I'm going to share today. And a couple of things, what Don said, I totally agree with. It's kind of interesting because I speak to the boots on the ground. Love Dale Marston from San Bernardino and the work that he's done with internships and they're working with workforce development. And they've taken some of these high school students in rough areas and they've got them making careers, not just jobs, but careers with good money. So I think that works. But the problem that lies in that's against manufacturing, as Judy said earlier, she said it twice, our voices need to be heard up in Sacramento. And so that's a foundational problem because I think the boots on the ground, I think most of our school districts, I think many of our parents want this type of, these trades. I grew up with those things. My best friend from high school didn't do very well in high school, but he got in construction, retired a number of years ago, and travels the world now, right? And yet he didn't do very well, but he knew how to do carpentry, and he was a master at it. And so I don't know why people think that there's something demeaning about that. I think the ability to have a craft and be skilled in it and work and make money is a very good thing. And so we have to bring those back. But the problem that stands in our way, and this is sort of the challenge to talk to you about today, is big government, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what I'm going to say is not Republican accusations against my friends across the aisle. These are facts based on the bills that they authored and they passed. Chris, if you've got a second, matter of fact, I'm going to pass some of these out so you know I'm not just pulling your leg here, but these are bills that affect manufacturing. And it's interesting. I want you to look down there and see all the D's, meaning Democrat, on who supports these bills that is going to eliminate manufacturing, and the R's who are in support of manufacturing. And so I think that's what we have to really, the foundational problem is government was supposed to be limited in its power, right? And today you have unelected bureaucrats that are making policy, like we talk about the Air Resources Board, and then the builders. It's funny, I'm on housing and had lunch with Randall Lewis yesterday, and they had 6,000 potential lots out in Highland that they've been working on for 6 years. But because of the powers to be in government, he thinks they're going to walk away from that project now. And those were 6,000 homes for potential first-time home buyers, but they haven't been able to get their project through. So again, it's government that stands in the way, because California, we want to remember what a great state we live in. We have the best weather in the world, right? From right where we're sitting right now, we could be snow skiing right up in the mountains today within an hour. And if it gets sunny tomorrow, we can be at the beach in an hour, or Palm Springs in an hour. We have the Silicon Valley to the north, which leads the world in technology, and over the hill from there, the San Joaquin Valley, which produces about $48 billion a year in agriculture revenue. And it just seems like we have government bureaucrats that want to destroy that. They want to take away water from the farmers, which is amazing to me. I see questions on here on infrastructure. We had SB 1 pass that raises about $5.2 billion a year, and much of that money is going towards things like bike trails in San Diego, sand dune restoration, and very little of it's actually going to go for roads and infrastructure. And we need that because, remember, infrastructure is a good thing, and it affects all of us, especially manufacturing. That's how our goods and services, we have to be competitive. China, in fact, took a page out of our playbook years ago when they were building our infrastructure. They copied what we used to do, you see. And even, I think it was some of the Romans, they believed the way to conquer kingdoms was, one of their secrets was they built roads quick, and then they moved their equipment over, took the other country over, and then brought their stuff back home. And so infrastructure is a good thing for it to be competitive. And again, if you look through some of those bills on there, what we have to do, ladies and gentlemen, we have to, Ronald Reagan once said, if you can't make the politicians see, that's for me, just tell them I'm in a meeting right now. So, thanks. Anyway, Ronald Reagan said, if you can't make the politicians see the light, make them feel the heat. And so I think an organization is good like this, but we do have to make our voices be heard, and we can't appease people up there. We have to fight because we have to return this country back to limiting government's power. The people in Sacramento believe that they're the masters and they're supposed to be the public servants. And so those are some of the challenges that I see that we have. And again, that's what I've got a number of bills. I can go through them later that I've authored. I've actually got some through that help businesses and manufacturing. But in that environment up there, you can't hit a home run. So I've hit a number of singles trying to get on base and then eventually drive in runs. But it's very hostile to businesses, this legislature up there, and especially manufacturers, because many of these people have embraced the gods of climate change, and so they look at all the manufacturing as contributing to just bad stuff, and so they lump most of you in together, and so those are things and challenges that I see almost every day of the week, ladies and gentlemen. So again, I'm not making an accusation, I'm making my comments based on facts and the votes that they author and give their floor speeches on, and the ones that they pass. And that's why I wanted you to pass it out again. So what we have to do is we cannot, I'll close with this one thought again. So the foundational problem is we've got to get people in there that value manufacturing, that value jobs, that value, I mean, gosh, a lot of charter schools have these programs to train kids in these programs that we want them trained in. And you have the teachers unions trying to close down the charter schools, and so that's certainly been a challenge. And again, much success. I have to give my hats off to Mike and the city of San Bernardino for the jobs that they've done and the workforce that they're producing out of that town. And so this last thought is, again, we have to make our voices be heard. We have to have strong lobbyists and people lobbying for us. You have to, we're governed by consent, so the most powerful voice is not the politician, but according to the founding principles, it's the citizen. So we have to make sure we're fully engaged in exercising our civic responsibility on these things, because it's our livelihood. And you can't appease people. Churchill says, an appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile hoping it will eat him last. And I see a lot of that up in Sacramento, where they're always, people on my side are always trying to be nice to the other side, and they just get beat down, and they end up compromising their bills, and my friends get 90% of what they wanted, and manufacturers or housing, they get very little. So again, forums like this is good, because we got to take these things back, because I'm sold on California. I love this state. I don't like when people leave, because I think California says, as California goes, so goes the nation. I think it's the battleground for the soul of America. I think it's battleground for free enterprise, because what happens here will go to states like Arizona, where my daughter lives, and she said there was an article in the paper a few weeks ago that they're asking people, how do we get Californians not to come here? They want people from the Midwest, just not California. So anyway, hopefully this should stir some kind of a conversation, right? But today we do face some other challenges, which I'll discuss later, but that's just sort of my opening remarks, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So thank you for allowing me to share those thoughts.
Well, thank you guys. Very insightful. And first category of questions that we have is on the economy and jobs. I know both of you have touched on that. I'm an aerospace manufacturer and testing contractor. I've been at the former Norton Air Force Base for 26 years. And we had a real issue in developing and keeping and actually finding a qualified workforce. Don mentioned that, and it's really difficult for all of us manufacturers. So I actually ended up starting a company called Technical Employment Training, Inc. that trains technicians in advanced manufacturing, precision machining, and welding for basically building our own workforce, let alone putting our folks into demand industry sector jobs. And manufacturing, as you know, is one of the top industry sectors in our county, let alone our state. And just the trials and tribulations of being in manufacturing, as most of you know, is really difficult to stay here in California and make a good living of it. We got some great people, great workforce. It needs to be upskilled to the levels that manufacturing is moving to. We're moving to additive manufacturing and wholesale other manufacturing processes that are shortening timelines, and if we're not prepared to keep up, and if we don't have the workforce to do it, guess what? We'll be looking for a job in Arizona, and it really is a challenge. So let's plow through a couple of these questions. And in the economy and jobs, we'd ask you to describe the state's effort to return manufacturing to California, or at least stop the exodus. What do you guys got to say about that?
Would you like to go first, or would you like me?
I'm super excited to hear your answer.
Oh. I think by what I stated earlier, I don't think California, Go Biz, that Governor Brown started, I'm trying to still figure out what exactly they do, and I mean that with all sincerity. I think they mean go biz, get out of here. And that's being as straight as I can on this. Look, we got 34% of the nation's welfare, so we are leading in some things, right? 20% of the state is on poverty, and we have some of the highest tax rates. And for 15 years in a row, CEO Magazine has surveyed some of the top 500 CEOs in America. And here's the great thing. They asked a number of questions, but the two I want to share with you. Number one, they said, where would you like to live? Do you know what number state comes number one? California. But 15 years in a row, do you know what state comes last, number 50th, for the most difficult place to do business? Is California. And so remember, these folks are going to go where they can make money and where they can thrive and where they won't be shackled. And so, our state's really, what they are doing, and again, that's why I passed out those bills, so you don't think Morrell's sitting here making accusations, but I've given you some things based on facts. Those are all bills that hurt your industry, and if you look, every single one of them is authored by the Democratic Party, because remember, a few years ago they called themselves progressives, which means they believe in the expansion of the bureaucratic state. And what are they referring to themselves today as? Socialists. Right? And what's the next step after that? Communism, I looked that up on Google the other day, the definition, and it's just an extension of socialism except by force. So who knows where this will go. But they are calling themselves socialists, and that means that manufacturers or anybody in business, when they give their floor speeches, they make us sound like we're very bad people who always try to take advantage of our employees. And I've known Brent here for Googe for years, and I see how they've taken in interns and trained them and then turned them into excellent paying jobs. And so the people I know in business and in manufacturing, like Mike, I've known him 30 years, they're good people. Again, he started an organization that helps youth get into these things, and now they've got careers. So, but another thing too that is worrisome to me isn't just the manufacturing and good jobs, but then California's become, so regulated that we can't build homes for first-time home buyers. And so that's the other side of it too, because home builders need things that manufacturers make, right? And another demographic, it's a book, if you ever get a chance to get it, it was recommended to me by the Hoover Institute. The title of it is How Money Walks, and it's just who's leaving California and why are they leaving? And one of the demographics that do put sort of fear of God into me is your highly educated young professionals between 25 and 39 years old. And the reason they're walking is housing, and then they're looking for jobs with careers, and you need a lot of money to be able to buy a home in California. So they're taking advantage, and they are leaving for other states. And we have 3 kids, unfortunately, that left the state, and they wanted to stay in California, but they were offered jobs, and they had to go because the opportunities were great, and we regret that. They were home at Thanksgiving, and Joni was certainly glad to have them home, but we miss them for sure. And then the other demographic that is leaving is highly educated middle-class professionals between the ages of 40 and 59. Who, because as they own businesses and that kind of thing, they want to be able to keep more of it. And I've met a lot of people over the years that work up in Sacramento, and they put their business or their mailing address in Incline Village in Lake Tahoe, which is right across the border in Nevada, which is a no-tax state. So those are some of the challenges we have. And as Republicans, I've got some bills maybe I can share with you later that I have gotten passed. And again, I've just tried hitting singles to get on base, things that help businesses, that help manufacturers. And I've had more turned down, and they were very good ideas, than I have actually gotten through. So those are some of the challenges, and I apologize. The answer is I think my friends across the aisle are not enthusiastic about seeing things grow. And if you listen to their words and their speeches, even by our governor, I think what I'm saying reflects his words. So thank you.
So at the county level, I'm learning that we sometimes make things more difficult in terms of a permitting and a regulation process than it has to be. And when I ask questions, so I went around to a water district, and I'm introducing myself to special districts and trying to learn about those. And I was out in the Yucaipa area, and they have a manufacturer out there that connects to a brine line. And that brine line runs all the way from Yucaipa all the way down and through and discharges into Orange County. And the water district general manager was explaining to me that manufacturers of a certain processes need to, it's an excrement that comes out of that process and they have to discharge it. And usually that's found along the coast where they can discharge. So having that brine line in the Inland Empire is a tremendous asset to manufacturers. And I thought, why are we not advertising that? Why are we not bringing those here? Because in the county, we want to reduce traffic. We want to have businesses that have a small imprint on that traffic. So we don't want to, we have affordable housing compared to the rest of Southern California. And how do we get people to want to live here and not commute to Orange County, LA, or San Diego, but stay here? Well, they need to have the job. So what is the job that's going to bring them here that then reduces their impact and their footprint? Well, manufacturing. So how do we make that easier and simpler? Well, a lot of times it's the governmental regulations. I like to point my finger at the state and say it's the state's problem. And I ran into an issue this week where our environmental health department at the county implements a lot of the regulations that come out of Sacramento, but we don't necessarily have to. We can go ahead and bypass the state regulations and take the liability at the county, but then we have the attorneys that say, if something goes wrong, the county's on the hook for that. And then it becomes the 5 supervisors deciding if that's worth the risk or not. And that is that's a business decision for the county. We are entrusted, we have a fiduciary responsibility of taxpayer dollars. And I think we have some very conservative-minded people that are interested in making your taxpayer dollars go far, but at the same time, we want to help ease the permitting process and the regulation that we create. So our environmental health department is one of the departments that I'm excited to get to know better to figure out how we can reduce those connection fees, how we can simplify the permitting process for manufacturing, for home builders, and all of that. So just because a state regulation exists doesn't mean we have to implement it. We can have ways around it that maybe we'll ask you, will you take on some of that liability? I have a hauled water issue out in the high desert. The state has prohibited hauled water from being delivered to homeowners. You can't put a well in some instances because of the groundwater. So they have above ground water tanks. Well, if you own a piece of property and you want to go retire and build on it, you can't. So environmental health can waive that, and we can allow it at the county, but because the state has the moratorium in place, we hide behind that at the county. And so I'm interested in exploring where we can help partner to reduce the liability and have progress go forward. So as I mentioned in the beginning in my opening statement, part of it is a learning curve for me on how we can simplify it between the state's regulation and what the county can and can't do. But I do know that there are regulations that we can hope to ease at the county level.
I have something positive to say, okay? Because your question was, what are we doing at the state level? And I gave you the best answer I can give. Where the breath of fresh air and the light comes for me is I'm grateful for our local business owners and leaders, as well as our people at the county and the city, because again, I do believe in local control as much as possible. Sometimes cities on permits can be a little tough to get through, but I like when we have more power and the ability to solve our problems, because at the local level we are doing. And again, I do travel all over the state, and what San Bernardino County is doing is some amazing things that other areas aren't doing. Again, things that started right here in this location. as well as what Mike's done and that sort of thing. So there is hope, but again, we cannot let the bureaucrats of Sacramento take away what little power we have, because things that we are doing and are getting accomplished is at a local level, and what I mean by local is at the county level and the city level, and then by people who get involved and who are business owners who want to take back their cities and their state and protect over their businesses so they thrive. So on a positive note, local level is where the action is, but we have to protect that as much as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. You know, and several of our manufacturers, I've identified cost challenges that impacts their ability to offer competitive wages and attract talent. And this is not only business costs, but also just cost of living, housing, as you mentioned, and things. What can we do? You know, how do we band together? How do we, create a more attractive environment, perhaps, for manufacturers to locate here, and then, of course, retaining our workforce?
Would you like to go first, or me?
I mean, I think we're hearing a few things already, just in the regulatory environment and reducing some of those burdens on business. But, how do we really attract that workforce and, from a cost competitiveness standpoint, not only, from our business competitive, but competing for the actual workers that come here?
Yeah, well, I think again, some of the infrastructure is in place, programs that you're doing, but it's just not manufacturing. It's the whole thing on government. And so one of the things that the difficulty why our highly educated young professionals between 25 and 39 years are leaving, it has to do with housing. They do want to buy housing, and it's pretty expensive. And so one of the things where government has maybe overstepped its boundary at a local level is sometimes cities make it very difficult for builders to build. That's one challenge. In one city, and I don't want to name it because it's in my district, I spoke with a builder a couple of days ago, and he said, in the middle of a game, they changed the rules, which makes it very tough. So a lot of builders have decided not to build in that city because it's too challenging. In other cities, by the time a builder gets ready to grade a lot, he's already spent, the company's already spent maybe $140,000 to $160,000 on a lot just for the processing fees and the entitlement fees and the permits, and then they get through CEQA and everybody else. And so that, they put that on top of the cost. And then Randall Lewis, I think it was about a year ago, at a meeting in Ranch Cucamonga, it was the Chamber of Commerce, he said this, so this is not gossip, that they were considering pulling out, and again, they are now, it looks like, out of that project in Highland, because they got a call from the unions, a particular union, who said, we can make, I believe it was CEQA, we can make them go away, because they're holding up on that project if you hire your plumbers and your contractors to be union, you see. And so the challenge with that is they're trying to build first-time homes out there, and so their cost analysis, if I remember this accurately, that adds $84,000 more per home to do that. And so, it sounded like it was sounds really bad, doesn't it? So the thing is, we can't have that, guys. So we, again, look at what I wanted when I was younger was I wanted a nice career. I wanted to buy a home, and so does our children. So we have to provide that. We have to work. It's just not manufacturing. We have to stick together the businesses, manufacturing, housing, and all, to make sure we prosper and we use our political clout to again, reduce government's power. And so that's one of the biggest things we have to do, is continue to reduce government's power and make sure that government ranks the citizens above the state, and remind our public servants that they're public servants and they're not masters. And I try to do that every time I go to the DMV, right? And so that's just one of many challenges that we do have. But if we had cheaper housing, we're going to keep people here. I think our kids do want to stay because they were born and raised here, but they have to go where the opportunity is. And then that's going to filter down too, because as cost goes up and as taxes go up, it's difficult for businesses to compete, because a lot of businesses run on profit margins of 8 to 12%. And, if you keep taxing them, that profit margin goes down, and then, it makes it tougher for them to be able to attract good quality people with higher incentive pays. So there's many problems. There's just not one answer that's going to solve all our problems. This is a whole lot of small things that we need to overcome.
So I'm going to try to be respectful and challenge what the senator said, one aspect of it. The up-and-coming generation, and I agree with you that my dream was to have a career and own a home. And we have fortunately been very blessed and successful to have accomplished that in our 2 lives. But the next generation coming up, I don't know that they want that. I have team members that work with me at the county. They have no desire to own a home. They like the ability to be transient, to pick up, to go where the next opportunity calls them. And it's not the wage, it's more of the mindset. It is sort of transient, and it has to do with technology, it has to do with just the impulsive nature of our youth coming up. And it's very interesting, as I talk to the 25 to 32-year-olds that I work with, that dream of home ownership, they don't care. They don't want to be strapped down and tied. It ties them to something. In labor negotiations with our unions, they talk about the mass exodus that they have, whether it's in our public safety or other fields, and that a higher wage will stop the bleeding that we have. We train, so we'll take the sheriff's department. We take a deputy, we train them, we invest a couple $100,000, and we want them to stay here and become a part of our county where they know the roads and the neighborhoods, and it adds to a better police force. But for some reason, we're losing them to surrounding counties. And the police union says that it should be a higher wage that will retain them. There is that argument, but I do think that there's something that is coming in a generational shift where people are just apt to not have that traditional job for 30 years where they have the pension and then retire it. You can offer a pension to these millennials, they don't care. They chase the next job, the next opportunity. So I think as employers, it's important to recognize the mindset that it's different than ours. It's different than how we were raised and what we looked for, and to find out what is important to them. It used to be that the payback of a college tuition would be enough to incentivize someone to come to work for your company if you had that matching tuition or a payback. I don't think that this generation coming up really cares about that so much anymore. They like their flexibility, they quit their jobs to randomly go travel, and then they think, oh, I'll pick up the next job wherever it is, wherever I can get work. And so it's different, and I think we have to be the people that research those up-and-coming kids and the next generation and understand what is motivating them and what are they looking for, so that we can keep and retain them as much as that's possible. So I'm not sure what the answer is. I just know that it's different than how we were raised.
I agree to a certain extent. And the only reason why is because Don's absolutely right. They're a different generation. But there was an article, if you read it a few days ago in the Wall Street Journal about that, talking about the younger generation. And so there's a big segment of them that do want to buy homes, but not traditional homes with half-acre lots or quarter-acre lots. They like things small, and they want to be next to shopping and restaurants and that sort of thing. And they like cities and large suburbs. And so, and in fact, it was talking about different states that they don't want to go into retirement communities like Sun City in Arizona. Did anybody read that the other day? No, you read that? And so, but there still is a market from there. And Toll Brothers did they've done their demographics and that sort of thing and their studies, and they usually build high-end homes, and so they're going to continue to do that. But to the younger group, they realize they're going to have to start at $300,000, and again, they have to have playgrounds, walking parks, and they need to be close to shopping centers and stuff like that. So there still is a huge market there. But I'm sure Don's right on that other thing too, because I've heard that very same thing. But as somebody's polling has been done, as young people leave our state, that is one of the things that they say is the cost of living is too high and housing is expensive. So that's my 2 cents. Yes, Judy?
There's also the element in my plant, we hire a lot of workers workers that do minimum wage work. This is completely different from what we're talking about here. This is my world of manufacturing. Finding qualified people to run the machines that are very specialized, but also finding those people that'll take that job to pack boxes. They don't have a prayer to buy a home, and possibly no education either. So when we do offer them some incentive programs to go to school, they are very interested. We bring in ETP as well, very important. We've been beneficiaries of state funds for years now. Huge impact, because it gives people a mark to maybe get out of just packing boxes. But frankly, some of them just want to pack boxes. That's my world of manufacturing, and it's completely different than the Silicon Valley or any of the others that are,
Well, thanks for those comments, guys. And I want to give an opportunity for our manufacturers that are seated in the semicircle here to introduce themselves. So if we could just go quickly around so the supervisor and senator gets to understand who's here and who's represented. Why don't we just start right here?
Wallace Brithany. I had Brithany Electric in Colton for 55 years, and now I've sold it to a 185-year-old Swiss company called Sulzer, who's one of their claims to fame would have been they invented the diesel. Rudolf Diesel was an engineer for Sulzer, but they are into turbo machinery and other things worldwide. So.
Thanks, Wally.
My name is Alex Clark. I'm with a company called Trimflex. It's a family business. We've been doing the same thing since about the 1880s, and we came to the Empire from Pasadena in about the mid-90s because we wanted to have more opportunity for our employees to have better housing, which they did, and now we're finding having those same issues that she was talking about. We're just getting qualified laborers and finding the right people to do a job that sometimes can be somewhat monotonous after a while. So.
I'm John Burgess. I spent 20 years in marketing, consulting, and advertising, decided that advertising is pretty crappy. And I recently joined with Judy at Microdeck Plastics, and it's interesting to see the difference between what we talk about in media space and what's going on maybe in marketing and what is really happening in the factory and how do we deal with some of these new issues. And from a plastics perspective, what is a biodegradable plastic? How's the state dealing with that? We've seen that plastics have been, from a recycling side, been struggling, and big companies in the recycling business have gone out of business, so it's a new thing, which I find pretty interesting and exciting.
yeah.
Stacy Duvall, Duvall Rubber Manufacturing, Vice President of Operations, and I'll let my dad introduce the company.
John Duvall, Duvall Rubber Manufacturing Group. We're in Victorville at the Southern California Logistics Airport. And we moved up there about 15 years ago, in particular because it did provide our employees an opportunity to have a little bit higher standard of living, where in Los Angeles County, Orange County, the cost of living and expenses were too high, and it was really difficult for us to pay the wages that they would have needed to buy a home and do those things, other things. So our operating costs are still probably very similar to what they would be if we were down here in Orange County, because we would pay the same wage, but because we're in the high desert or the Mojave River Basin, it's given them an opportunity to have a little bit better standard of living. We're impacted by the environmental issues like everyone else and things, and I get a little frustrated because we, in California in particular, we have an NIMBY attitude, a NIMBY view of things. We don't want this in our backyard. And it's frustrating because as a rubber manufacturer, we're a tiny little operation, and I get the benefit when a large manufacturer is close by because they bring in supplies or product, and then I get to buy those things at a reduced rate a lot of times, or I can be more competitive. So I'm competing with guys in the Midwest or in Asia. Well, when the big manufacturers say it's too expensive to operate in California any longer, they move out of state, then I don't have access to those sources any longer that were being brought into me. So it's really frustrating. No longer, and in particular, I love living in California. I like the quality of life that we have here. I like the environmental issues that they're trying to impose on us. I don't have a problem with that to a point, but make it fair for even product that's brought into California. I know this is going to be really radical. I'm probably a communist in this way, if you're talking about them. Don't bring in product from out of state if it doesn't meet California standards. And that's really frustrating because we have to pay for those things here, and we're a small manufacturer. We'll figure out ways to meet those requirements if we have to. It's going to be more expensive, so don't let us be sacrificed to companies out of state that don't have to pay for those things. So, anyway.
Frank Velasquez, General Manager of EPAC Flexible Packaging. We are a disruptive startup business model in the consumer packaged goods industry. 9 months ago, we did not exist in California. We're now at 25 people in Chino. Our business model is to focus on mid to small-sized companies who basically are getting their product from China. And so now we're able to create jobs in local communities and foster, a really strong sense of engagement with our workforce. We intend to grow to 70 people in Chino, and which then we'll have to expand somewhere else because of limitations on emissions. And so I'm interested to understand where those opportunities are.
Nice, thank you.
Hi, Joe Avlar with Phoenix Motor Cars. We have 2 locations, one in Ontario, one in Chino, and we manufacture electric drivetrains for Class 4 vehicles. And
hi, I'm also from Phoenix Motor Cars, Yasma and Follow. So we're here to talk about the infrastructure as well as us growing with the company and hiring the engineers, the next level, high-end, skilled workforce. So that's the reason why we're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Albert Smith, Pacific Precision in Laverne. We're a about 50 employee high precision machine shop, making parts for medical, dental, aerospace, parts for general manufacturing. I'm the quality director. I've been with the company 35 years. Worked my way from machine operator to quality director. No college education, okay? Solid middle class living. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't had metal shop in high school. We need to get it back in high school.
Steve Terrell, maintenance manager for Mitsubishi Cement. We're really concerned with our aging workforce and not being able to supply a skilled labor force. So definitely on board with this Intech Center, replicating the success that they've had here in the high desert. Many of you had the pleasure or the displeasure of trying to traverse the Cajon Pass over the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, and just getting up and down the hill can be a major event. For the standard of living that we have in the high desert, it can also be a challenge for transportation. So being able to replicate a training center such as this to develop high quality electrical, mechanical, mechatronics, skilled labor force that we can utilize in the high desert is extremely vital. We want to utilize that base of employees that are there in the high desert that just don't have the skills. They like living in the high desert, they're homegrown, they're going to stay. We've tried importing workforce and it doesn't work. They stay for a short period of time and then they go back home. So what we really want to do is develop that workforce locally and continue to develop the economic stability of the region. And with the help of both the state and the county, that's becoming a reality. And hopefully next month or at the latest February, we'll have another training center opened at the Southern California Logistics Airport. Thank you for your support, and continued support is going to be appreciated. The hardest thing we have is the sustainability. Having to put that emphasis on the community colleges, it's where it belongs, but try to find a means so that they don't have to continue to go out and get grants. There are so many grants that are required to keep a building such as this open and sustainable.
making it easier on the community colleges to provide the quality input, because they've been listening to us as industry. They've modified their curriculum. We are a collective voice as a manufacturers council, both in the Inland Empire and in the high desert. They understand what the product that we want, and getting that into the K through 12 is also important. We also have to educate the parents so that they understand that there are viable, sustainable careers that don't require a college education or college debt.
Thank you.
My name is Joel Feitosa. I work for CMC Steel. So we operate a mill in Rancho Cucamonga. That mill has been there for over 60 years. And CMC acquired this company or this facility a year ago. And unfortunately, about a month ago, because of the environmental burden cost and the energy cost, the company decided to discharge 110 employees. So the last melting capacity in California doesn't exist anymore. California no longer melt ferrous scrap to make steel. So we adopting the same business model that California Steel has been running for years. So we are bringing melting capacity from other states, and we are going to keep only half of the production here, which is the rolling mill, to make rebar for the state and the West region. So.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so my name is Renato Silva. I'm the rolling mill manager. I work for the same company as Rowe. I want to talk a little bit about the workforce, right? That the skilled workforce that we've been talking about this meeting. It's been very challenging for me to hire workforce, a skilled workforce that want to work over there, engineers that want to help us be successful over there. We've tried to bring engineers from outside California because it's so difficult to hire to manufacture plants, those engineers, and unfortunately we haven't been successful because the cost of living here is so high they end up going back home. So we fortunately found one here and there that would go there, and they have the parents around, they still live with their parents, and that ease up on the cost, and they've been there with us. But it's definitely a challenge to bring those engineers to work on the manufacturing when there's such a high cost as well, and then you can't afford to pay wages that will allow them to live in the state. It's a very difficult, it's a burdensome.
Well, thanks for sharing.
Kurt Ponser with Mindrum Precision. We are a third generation company. My grandfather started it. We're just under 50 employees. We will stay that way because of the permitting and regulations required if you go above that. But what I would say, feedback for the representatives who work for the people, solve the transportation problem. I lost an employee last week because they said it just was too hard getting through the 15 freeway from Victorville down to here, because that's where they could live, but this is what the job that they wanted. So solve the transportation problem. It might be tied in with solving the mobility of the housing problem, would be ours, and get that education force into high schools and these colleges for getting people motivated that I can build stuff with my hands. At our company, we've built stuff for the Voyager program, for the Apollo space mission, and we're currently on the International Space Station and Maven and Juno, Pathfinder. We're doing amazing things. We just need more talent pools to draw, because everything's a prototype, and we need those smart hands, those smart minds to be able to create that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, Danny Wexstein with Niagara Bottling. So we're based, recently we just shifted from Ontario over to Diamond Bar. We are a Southern California family owned and operated company, focused on bottling across the US and globally. And what we're looking for is an increase of mechatronics students. I focus on university and vocational special outreach. So in the last 12 months, we did a maintenance ramp up of about 300 individuals. We were successful in hiring about 200 into development roles, finding people who had the skill set and really understand the Internet of Things. And I'm here today to understand what y'all are doing to help expand people interested in those mechatronics programs. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Sam Gatton. I'm also with Niagara Water. And one of the things that I have a passion for also is organic growth within our company, because as our company expands and grows and reaches higher technology, in order to retain a lot of employees, I think if we have opportunities, you know, like Intech and other places like that, it offers people a chance to grow and learn. We'll have a better chance of retaining them, because not everybody wants to get into leadership. Like I say, I was once started out that way in the industry as a maintenance technician, and then promoted, which I'm not sure if it was promoted or demoted, but I get into leadership. And, but anyway, I think opportunities that we could provide our employees that don't necessarily have to be leadership, it can be higher technology, and as Danny mentioned, into that, you know, in the higher technologies in our industry. Thanks. Thanks, sir.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bill Tynan. I'm a Director of Education with Garner Holt Education Through Imagination. We're a STEAM learning and career exploration company inspired by the work of Garner Holt Productions, which today is the world's leading manufacturer of animatronics and animatronic-related technologies. We're today based in Redlands, but we've been there just over a year. For 42 years before that, we were in San Bernardino, just a couple of miles to the west. And so our mission is to work with schools, school districts, educational organizations, manufacturers, private businesses to introduce students to careers in manufacturing, robotics, automation, and to really help recreate that narrative that you were talking about. And so what we like to say is that although higher education is for everybody, university is not the only pathway to higher education. And so we get really excited about helping students redefine, well, introduce a lot of times, but otherwise redefine their perceptions of manufacturing. Oftentimes their view is that it is a low-skill, low-wage, dirty job. And in this day and age, in the age of advanced manufacturing, we're really excited to help reshape that vision. We are also motivated by this generational shift that we're talking about, and we recognize that in this new world, in the gig economy, it really is the spark of a new kind of entrepreneurialism as well. And so helping students, and another thing too, I would say, my background's in public education, 15 years in a charter school environment as a teacher, counselor, and administrator. Schools have not done a very good job at supporting students who want to do their own thing, who want to become their own boss, who'd like to have their own business. And so we think it's a great kind of marriage between that shifting mindset and this new age of advanced manufacturing. And so what we do is help develop, among other things, environments on school campuses that are putting students into real world of work situations, interacting with different pieces of advanced manufacturing equipment, really hoping to create sparks so that when they do get into high school, they're making more informed choices about the career pathways that they want to go down. And then they're making connections with the community college, which Mr. Terrell mentioned. We're really, really inspired by the mission of the community college is to create, I think it's 1 million middle skill jobs here, you know, in the coming decades. So very happy to be here, and happy to advocate for increased opportunities for businesses like ours to work in the public domain with public schools. We're a proud partner with the San Bernardino County Workforce Development Board and the Generation Go program. And so we just want to just continue to advocate for ways to expand that involvement.
Hey, thank you, Bill.
Good. My name is Diego Wood. I'm Chief Engineer with Husband Corporation. We're a division of Panasonic, North America. We have approximately 500 associates at our facility in Chino Hills. About 300 to 400 of those are manufacturing. We have about 150 professionals there. And we also have about 45 engineers, mechanical engineers that work at that facility. We're primarily a design hub. We are the manufacturer. Whenever you go to any supermarket and get something hot or cold out of a refrigerator, we are that manufacturer. We have about 65% market share in that business. And we've enjoyed being in California. Our biggest challenge, and the reason we partnered with Intech Center, is training. I think we've all, talked about that, and that's one of the things that we've actually hired from Intech, and it has been a good incubator for our manufacturing associates who come from this facility. So we support it highly.
Thank you.
I'm Ron Burgess. I'm on the advisory board for Microdyne Plastics. I'll let Judy talk about that. I also am Mike Gallo's front man.
I'm Judy Lopez, president of Microdyne Plastics, 45-year-old company. Been around since my dad, the founder, started. I was his first employee, so I understand that organic growth that you're talking about, because I did every single job within that facility, from shipping and receiving to production floor, to a stint in the tool shop, to turn handles. It's a great job. Any of the ones that I have been a part of. I was in engineering for 12 years, designing the tools, running our machines, and my education is by the School of Hard Knocks, as well as experientially. I've taken some classes, but I found that when you're actually there doing the stuff, it's a lot of fun. And that's what I want to bring to our facility, is the skill set, because I have two skill sets. I have the ones that really want to maybe even learn English as a second language so that they can raise their skill set. And we're looking at training them so that, again, because we can't find the people outside, we can bring these smart people brains that we have inside and raise the level of their expertise, their skill set. So to me, I think that manufacturing is kind of a capsule within the area that you're at. There's a lot of school that we can take advantage of, but we have machines that are just sitting there idle. To me, if that machine shop could have a few students, I've talked about this with various people, but I haven't been able to go forward with it, but if that could be a little satellite branch off Intech, these are ideas that we have to start coming up with, because our people up north in Sacramento aren't going to do it for us. We have to lead the charge. We can't sit on the cart. We have to lead the charge. So that's kind of my what I'd like to see is more education, more opportunities, more manufacturers working with the educators as well as politicians to bring that about. Because we're like little capsules. They don't see us down here. You don't know my world, I don't know yours all the time, but we can certainly share that and make it better.
Thank you.
So I'm Kusum Kavia with Combustion Associates, first generation immigrant to this country, and really talking about entrepreneurship. We wanted to have our own business, so it's a family-owned business. We've had it for 30 years. We started out in Orange County and realized very soon that it being very expensive in Orange County, we wanted to move to Riverside. And so today, we're based in Corona. We've been there for the last 20 plus years. And what we do is we manufacture power generation systems. So these are utility scale power generation systems where we get a gas turbine from a GE or a Siemens, and then we integrate that into our package to provide electricity. And what we've found is in the 30 years of doing business is our customers come from overseas. So we do a lot of exports. We've been lucky to get the US President's Export Achievement Awards 2 years in a row because we've got large exports going out of California. And outside of California, people love that Made in California, USA label. What we've been really not being successful in is having a power generation plant here where we can point to when customers come and we have to send them to Africa or to Central America or elsewhere to see what we can do. I think that the regulatory climate here has been one of the challenges of the AQMD requiring, zero emissions. And with a gas turbine power generation system, you're going to have some NOx and CO, and there is some technologies to reduce that, but then of course your cost goes up. So as my friends here, Judy, John, and Steve have said, we've utilized the ETP grant funding to train our workforce, but it's been very difficult to keep them. We hired certified welders, pipe fitters, electricians, control technicians, because it's very sophisticated equipment, multi-million-dollar projects that we're shipping out of here. And our need is the same as you hear from the group here, which is make it easy for us to stay here. Every week I get a call from Florida or San Antonio or Houston saying, move here. We'll be able to help you. Lower taxes, we'll give you incentives, and yet we love it here. Our local supply chain has been here, but they're moving. So I'm here to understand, what is the state doing for manufacturers? Because when you sell a product here, and if your supply chain is here, as manufacturers, we're also supporting all the other suppliers, whether it is a pump or a motor or conduit or steel or rebar. All of these things go into our system, so we need help. We really need help, and I agree with Steve. Make it easy for our community colleges, please, to get this grant funding so that they can provide it to us so that we can keep our workforce educated and updated.
Thank you.
That's amazing, sitting here, what everybody's going through. I think we're all looking at it like, is it death by 1,000 cuts? And for a company like California Steel, we make sheet and pipe, and we're heavy manufacturing. We can't really go anywhere else. We'll either live here or die here. And we've been living, right? We've been handling each one of these new things as it comes along, and being thankful that most of the steel industry that competes with us is pretty far back east, and there's transportation costs to compete with us. But that advantage is going away bit by bit, all the time. As far as the workforce issues, we thought the Intech Center would solve it all. They've been working really hard to help us, and a lot of these other companies. We've still got, 50, Scott Starr's our Executive VP of Operations. I'm Brett Googe, I'm sorry, I should have said my name, but retired recently, but still working on some external stuff for CSI. And, we're seeing 15 openings for electricians.
Minimum.
At least. Even as we train them, develop them and all that, there's so much of a demand for it. A lot of the other really good companies around here, particularly the utilities, have I won't say poached, but they don't work shifts, so it's a little easier for them. But I think on this cost issue, I look at this list here of what's on the bills that were passed and so forth, Mike, and all of those, I can tell you, man, that hit us here, that hit us here, that hit us here. And now you've got AB 5, which I'm trying to learn more about. This is the bill that says, truckers, as a huge example, have to become employees versus independent contractors. Our estimate is that trucking costs, if that goes that way, and if there's not an exemption for truckers, you're talking about the Inland Empire. This is all about logistics here. Yeah. And for us, it's all about logistics as well, and for our customers all around the state. We've got a couple of hundred manufacturing customers in the state that buy steel from us. We truck to most of those. They usually pay the trucking costs, but trucking costs, we're being told, could go up 25% with this AB 5 if it sticks that truckers don't get an exemption for that. So I think that's something to be looking at, just another way that we'll see our customer base here for sure.
Can I share a little bit on AB 5, everybody?
Please.
So AB 5 by Gonzalez, my Democratic friend from San Diego. This was I'm the only Republican on the Senate Labor. And the first question first of all, what it is, anybody who's an independent contractor, they want to make a full-time employee where you have to pay W-2s, as you know. Once they become W-2s, then the company has to pay, 12.3% of Social Security. So costs go up. So what happens is it was very, very bad because there's thousands of independent people. One of them, for an example, is the truckers, but let me give you one example before them, which I learned a lot about this. Physical therapists. Spoke with them. They may work for 12, 13 different doctors. You know, they go to Dr. Smith. He says, you know, he can only afford, you know, so many people. We'll go over Mrs. Jones' house. She just had surgery and work on her. So now this physical therapist will have to go to those 12 doctors and get them to employ her, you know, on W-2s. Think about how crazy that is. Same thing with truckers. And truckers, some of these independent truckers that I've spoken to, they carry for 20 to 30 different companies. So those 20 and 30 different companies is not going to put them on W-2, so it's very problematic. And some of the costs associated, remember 78% of our goods and services are trucked in by 18-wheelers. So some think that goes as high as in the average person's family, groceries and furniture, and an extra $2,400 a year in costs, you know. And so, but it's problematic in the fact that a lot of these guys think that they're just going to have to move to another state, which will go to private companies that already have, you know, their own drivers and that type of thing, which supply and demand says those costs will indeed go up then for manufacturers. But here was a challenge. It was a union-sponsored bill, and what they're going after is try to make more people unionized, okay? And the reason why is Gonzalez, when she was testifying before our labor committee, whenever I asked a question, she would lean over to the two union people for the answer. And what they were really going after is unionizing as many people as they can, but especially Uber and Lyft. That's really what the bill. But here was the problem, a thing called carve-outs. And a carve-out meant the more powerful lobbyists, like the realtors, are very powerful. So they got a carve-out, meaning they don't have to go towards this. So the first question I asked Lorena Gonzalez is, do you believe in the term opportunity for all and favoritism towards none? And she said, yes, I do. I said, well, explain to me the definition of carve-outs. You're picking winners and losers. And she denied that, but in fact, that's what she is, because these guys over here get carve-outs, and these guys, like the physical therapists, they don't get carve-outs, and the truckers. So, and there's so many industries. I spoke with a gentleman just recently who does financial planning. So stockbrokers work in his office, they're paid commission, and he did not even know that he's going to have to put those guys on salary coming January 1. So it's going to impact so many industries, and it's going to impact our costs, because those costs go be high. And then for employers, remember, you know, some employers have these huge profit margins, but as I've spoken with different employers over the years, they're not making, you know, they're not making as much as you. I mean, they're making a lot of money sometimes, but their profit margins, you know, like grocery stores work on a 1 to 2% profit margin. So you can't squeeze them. You know, of course they sell in huge volumes, so the money ends up being good. But that's my concern, is you keep dwindling that. That's why you have so many businesses leaving. And that AB5, where we get rid of independent contractors, is just going to affect so many of us across the board. It's going to have unintended consequences, because you may not be your industry may not be affected by it, but somehow those costs are going to end up hitting you. And again, the independent truckers is one that you know, some studies have been done, and they think it'll average an extra $2,400 per family if that goes through. And then that's just towards the private, you know, people. So your industry, I'm sure it's going to even impact it more. And so that's why we have to stop these things, because it's just, again, all it is an attempt for the unions who do control California. They're at the top of the food chain right now, and they want to be able to unionize as many people as they can so they have more power. The teachers union, you know, they spend about $1,300 a year on dues, and half of that money goes for political races. And so, you know, it's just, it's very difficult. And again, we can't appease them. We're going to have to defeat them. And a couple of things is, just for me to finish my thoughts, I think the number one thing that I got from all of you, what you were saying, is we really need to push this career technical education is what I think. I think it's going to be good for our youth. It's especially going to be good for our companies. And so that's my takeaway that I learned here today, because I'm always thinking about Sacramento and regulation. which again, there's 1,000 ways to kill us, as you said, Brett, and we've got to work on all of those. But the one common thread that you guys have here is about these career tech centers. And as Mike will tell you, I've always been working on that since the very first day that I got here, and I'll continue to do that. And so thank you. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood AB5 because it's a very dangerous bill.
Thanks, Mike. Brett?
Brett covered on Scott Stark, EVP of Operations for California Steel. Moved here. I'm not from California. I wanted to be here because there's opportunity here. After I moved out here, this is a couple years ago, Pennsylvania sent me the videotape saying, "Come on back. We have all this." Well, no, California is supposed to be the land of opportunity, right? So anything we can do to, we have a model system here at Intech. Brett and a lot of other people in this room have been instrumental in getting this done. I'm just a beneficiary of this. So the more we can replicate that, the better. But the other side is, we want to be responsible citizens. We want to be responsible corporations, and making it easy for responsible corporations to be here by lowering the cost of doing business, whether it's environmental, cost of power. Fortunately, we saw what happens with Joel's when that happens, when it gets out of control. So the help we can get to lower those costs that other people and other companies outside the state don't have to abide by, that's where we need some help. But as I said, this is a model. Intech ought to be celebrated and duplicated as much as we can.
Yes. Thank you. Great, thank you. Well, I know we're starting to wind down our time. We wanted to end at 10 a.m. So I'm going to pick maybe one or two questions out of each of the other categories on education. We heard a common theme, as Mike mentioned, on workforce and education as being prominent. How are we going to actually see our own kids, grandkids migrate into the workforce and create economic prosperity for themselves, their communities, and their region, right? I mean, this is a great state to be in. It's a great opportunity, but there are significant challenges as we've all experienced. And how do we keep our kids here? How do we create opportunities in companies that are starting in the 1880s and keep them here? Keep them thriving and generating economic prosperity. So the real issue is, how do we perhaps motivate, incent, inspire, engage our young people to pursue, technical careers? Maybe it's not college for all. Maybe it's not college now. Maybe it's college later. And my son did the same thing. I wanted to be a rocket scientist like I am. I went to a bunch of schools and did all of the things you're supposed to do to get to do the things I get to do. And he hated it. And make a long story short, he worked for a plumbing contractor friend of his, and about 5 years ago started his own plumbing business, a multi-million-dollar plumbing business, doing it himself, and he loves it. It's hands-on, project-based, applied learning, and he loves it. And that's what he was made for and made to do. How do we grow these kids? How do we incent? How do we do the things like many of us are doing in some of our school districts to provide these career technical education opportunities in our schools and things? And how can we get maybe the state to even recognize that this is a challenge in building our future workforce?
I'll take this. I'll start with this. So it was at Bill. So Bill touched on an excellent example of what Garner Holt is doing, and I've had the opportunity several times to be in those warehouses and see the school buses come and the children come, and to go through and to see, and your product is amazing. So that excites and inspires the youth of what it is that they can do, they can touch, they can see, and then through the partnership that Garner Holt has through Garner's Garage and the exposure. So I would say, to answer your question, is exposure. To expose our youth to the opportunities that are available and out there is key. So how do you get partnered with your school districts, Dale Marsden and the San Bernardino City Schools? He does a fantastic job of working with our workforce development and our businesses to expose those kids. And if you can start them young and you can get into their career pathways, guide them, whatever that is. It might not be just manufacturing, but to at least have that exposure at a young age in partnership and collaboration with our superintendents and the school districts and the community colleges and our workforce development at the county level. I think that helps answer your question about what opportunities are out there and then how to help those kids and their families get them into those careers. So I would say it's really a partnership with those entities. And I know we're winding down. If we keep going, I'm gonna have to excuse myself. So I've got to be in Joshua Tree in an hour and a half. So I thank you for the opportunity, and I'm excited to hear your answer, and then I'm gonna sneak out.
And look, since she's come aboard, she's just doing great. She is a public servant who works hard. She's all over the county representing the citizens of of our state here in San Bernardino County. So I'm grateful for Dawn, hard worker. A couple of things, as I've been sitting here thinking about this, I think these programs that you guys put together is excellent. Nick and I develop a program on internships. We probably 30 to 40 interns that we do just in, we have a syllabus. We introduce them to the Federalist Papers, Plutarch, Ethics by Aristotle. Some of them have a buy-in and they love it, and others don't. We had a couple of times where we've had forums like this, and they were billed for 2 hours, and the last two we had, they stayed past midnight. And so there's something that if you get them connected to that. Now we've got some of them that are actually, one guy who was in my program just won a city council seat in Canyon Lake, and we've got people, actually one guy's working at the White House now, and we've got him in congressional offices, Senate offices. So, as I'm hearing about what Mike's doing and Brett, I think these programs are really good. And it's a breath of fresh air, because this is something that's tangible, that's working. So one of the thoughts that I have is, I usually just think about the 23rd District, which is Cucamonga to Cabazon up to Big Bear, a little bit of the desert, not much, and then down to Hemet. So that's kind of my universe that I work in, and I'm so proud of San Bernardino. I've worked with Dale Marston. I've tried to help him as much as I can, and these guys have just done a phenomenal job. And as we sit here today, and I hear that that's the common thread, that what we really need. We need a lot of things. Like, I was looking at the manufacturing costs. We're 135% higher in our electrical cost, than Nevada, and 83% higher than Arizona. So there's 100 things that we got to do to just, if we can just take them one at a time. But the biggest one, again, as a takeaway for me today, is I'm in the 23rd District, but I'd like to expand, and I don't know if we could put something together, but some type of a program that we advertise throughout the state. This is what we're doing here in San Bernardino. Here's the results that we're actually producing, and I would tell you that would be something I'd love to promote, because that's something that I'm proud of, because San Bernardino doesn't get very many pats on the back. It's always San Francisco, San Diego, and Los Angeles, and yet we're doing this program better than anybody else, and few people throughout the state is doing the program that you guys are doing here. So perhaps, in the next few weeks or something, we can get together and figure out how to maybe present this statewide and to people in Sacramento, because there's going to be a lot of schools that will, and parents, I think, most of all, will have a buy-in to this.
So I know Dawn has to leave, and let's thank her for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me today, Molly. Thank you for everything.
And maybe we can coerce Mike to hang around for a little bit after and answer any further questions, and maybe we can even figure out how to bring this message to the state in a real concerted way and showcase what we're doing here, and maybe even bring some additional resources to see us implement more of what we see around here.
But only easy questions.
Only easy ones. Thank you, guys. Thank you.